Welcome to episode 55 of the Underdog Sports NBA show. I am Tyler Laurie, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host out on the left coast, Zandrick Ellison. Zan, how are you on this fine Wednesday?
Good. And, I'm actually excited because it's what we think of as a slow news week in the NBA, but that's actually good for us and our purposes because it's a good time to kind of dig in a little deeper into the teams and our predictions. And sometimes you don't always get the chance when you're blurring through like 50 free agent signings. So we actually get the chance to talk a little bit more basketball today.
Absolutely. I found myself being really excited for this episode. We're going to go over the next 6 weeks. We're going to preview each division in the NBA. We're going to start today with the Pacific Division because it's your roots. So in that, we will cover kind of their lineup, what we think about this team, some bold predictions, maybe some best case scenario, some worst case scenario, some bovadasportsbook.com over-unders for the gamblers out there, and then kind of just go from there. But we were worried about it being a slow kind of news cycle, and August is just so slow. And I don't know, Zan, if you can take any more Team USA talk. I might mute Team USA basketball from my Twitter timeline. I just am so tired of hearing people pull out or like that the team is in disarray. So what do you think? Are you just done with Team USA for right now?
Well, it sucks for the players and the coaches. And that's one of the reasons I don't mind people pulling out. It's only a story if they lose, right? Like no one's going to care. They win every game by 10 points. It will never come up, but it's only fun if there's dysfunction or they lose to Serbia or something. So it's a no-win situation for them. Look, international basketball, you can't win every single game. No basketball team can, no matter what sport, no matter how big of an advantage you are, even if they send all the superstars, you're not necessarily going to win every game. So I think there's sort of an unfair bar that the Team USA has to deal with.
Definitely agree with that. Also, I think it's kind of interesting some of the guys that have pulled out lately just because if you're not going to make the Olympic team next year, PJ Tucker sounded like he legitimately got hurt, but like a couple other guys like De'Aaron Fox or whatever, like you're just probably not going to make the Olympic team if everybody plays. So why go? I don't know. It's interesting, but it's like there's nothing else to talk about in basketball except for the Lakers because we had the DeMarcus Cousins injury, which we'll get into when we talk about the Lakers. And then we had Royce White calling out the league for blackballing Melo and slandering Jared Dudley's name at the same time. So it's like, unless you're the Los Angeles Lakers or you care about Team USA, there's not much else to talk about. So we'll get into the Pacific Division. We're going to go in order of how the teams finished last year, just in terms of who we talk about first, from worst to first. So, Zan, the first team on the docket, the Phoenix Suns, a favorite of yours, last year 19-63. This year's Bovada over-under for the Suns is 29 wins. I will start right here. Do you think they're going over or under 29 wins?
Well, let's talk about what they did in case people haven't been paying attention first. I think it's important because for them, they made a couple interesting moves. They got rid of my former top pick, Josh Jackson. They kind of cut the cord on that, a disaster. And they brought in, I think the big signing is Ricky Rubio, kind of stabilizing the point guard position. They added some more shooting, they hope, with Dario Saric and Cam Johnson, the draft pick. So kind of logical moves, re-signing Kelly Oubre, talented young player. They just have such a long way to go.
I agree with you. I think that they looked at their team from last year and they realized, like, hey, the one thing we didn't have was a point guard. So you're right, Ricky Rubio. Again, we both kind of think that's a little bit of an overpay. 3 years, I believe, $51 million. But then they also drafted Ty Jerome. They drafted Cam Johnson. So although their team is still considered very young with DeAndre Ayton and Devin Booker, they did draft some older guys. So it looks like, as we talked about before, that they're going to compete. I'm not 100% sure what they're going to do with their starting lineup. I kind of looked at it somewhere like this: Rubio, Devin Booker, one of Mikal Bridges or Kelly Oubre, and then Dario Saric and Ayton. I'm guessing it's going to be 5 of those 6 guys, and then other contributors: Tyler Johnson, Ty Jerome, Aaron Baines, Cam Johnson, and then the rest of the team kind of falls off quick. They do have Frank Kaminsky. They have Chuck Diallo. I would expect those guys to play a little bit too. But I mean, the division is brutal. Obviously, the West is brutal. 29 wins feels kind of right for this team, but there are some reasons to watch. I mean, what's the best case scenario for the Phoenix Suns this year?
Well, I think if you're looking for reasons for optimism, new coach, Igor Kokossian, whatever, didn't work out for whatever reason. He had a good pedigree, but it just didn't translate literally, I guess, in Phoenix. So if Rubio is average, let's say. That's a big upgrade from where their point guard situation was before.
And he should be, I think we both agree that he should be better than average. Ricky Rubio, although the shooting woes are 100% real, Ricky Rubio has been a very good starting point guard. And they'll have the ball in Devin Booker's hands a ton.
Yeah, and Booker's like, offensively, he's there. You know, he's averaging 26 points, 7 assists a game. I mean, you can't really argue with it. And then the other big reason for optimism, of course, is like DeAndre Ayton had one of the quietest 16-10 rookie years in recent history, and he's got overshadowed by Luka and Trae Young. But for his age, we say it all the time, he plays like he's 30 years old. I mean, he is so far along offensively for a big man, you know, 20-year-old big man. Like, he's ahead of where Joel Embiid was. You know, I think he's ahead of like where Shaq was and Hakeem, and just like offensively, his skill set and his production at this age. And it's a different era. But if he could take a massive leap and be like a 20 and 12 guy as soon as next year, it's not ridiculous to think. And so, you know, if you have Booker and Ayton and then competent veterans around them, I could see them winning 30 plus.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, you know, Kelly Oubre, 17 points a game in 40 games with the Suns last year, increased his usage percentage with them, shot the ball really well. TJ Warren's out of there, so there's some more shots for guys off the bench if they view Oubre as that guy. Like you said, I do think DeAndre Ayton, I mean, it feels like nobody's talking about him to take a jump to be like a third-team All-NBA guy. There is a possibility there. That's not what I picked as one of my bold predictions, but
like he could be like a top 10 center. Like
if you told me he was a top 5 center, I think I would believe it because he's going to play most of his minutes at the 5. Like, I mean, is there a world where like he averages 23 and 12 and you're just not that surprised by it? Like, I think that's possible.
I think it's expected. I think 20 and 10 is expected this year.
Right. And he was 16.3 and 10.3 on 58.5 from the field, which is really good. He made 75% of his free throws if he gets fouled a little bit more. I mean, I would expect him to be 20 and 12.
With better point guard too. You'd think that would set him up. But when we talk about the negatives, when I say they have so far to go, I mean, like, you can't understate that. Like, I'm looking at the advanced stats. Like, sometimes when we talk about over-unders, like, football is so different because, like, if you're bad, you tend to regress to the mean a little bit. So like a 2-14 team in the NFL is probably going to win 4 games next year just by virtue of just like, different luck. If you're bad in the NBA, you tend to be, you might just be bad. Like 2 years ago, this team, it's amazing, ranked 30th out of 30 in offensive rating, 30th out of 30 in defensive rating. That's pretty hard to do. And last year wasn't a lot better, 28th and 29th respectively. So it's just like on paper, they were like the worst team in the NBA. So can they improve 10 games based on better coaching and a few extra pieces? It sounds optimistic to me, to be honest.
It's possible. I do think their best case scenario is that we kind of drastically undervalue the fact that they now have 2 to 3 guys who can play point guard. Devin Booker gets better defensively. Ayton takes a jump. Like, I think there is a world where this team could get the 8th seed. I don't think it'll happen. I think that's their best case scenario, though. There's not
what's like the worst case? Because the worst case, being the worst team in the league is not necessarily the worst case scenario because you get another elite talent. I think the worst case scenario for them would be, being like 20 and 35 and then not quite bad enough to tank. And then you end up with like the 8th pick and you end up like you're the Charlotte Hornets or something.
Right. That's bad. I think literally speaking, that probably is the worst case scenario. I picked the worst case scenario as this. I picked the worst case scenario as they win 20 games. Monty Williams gets fired because Robert Sarver's an idiot, and then Devin Booker asks for a trade. Like, that's what I think. It's like the team actually kind of comes undone. Because I do agree with you. Like, if you end up with a high pick in next year's draft, and maybe
right, that's fine. And Monty Williams has signed, I think, a 5-year contract. So
right, we know that Robert Sarver's a dope, though. Just for the record. So we've talked about this before.
So what do you think? So the Bovada over under you think is 29? You said this.
Yes, correct.
Do you want to do your official bold prediction, or you just want to pick your over under?
I don't think they're going to go over this year. I could see it for sure, just in terms of looking at their roster and how many guys they need to take kind of bigger leaps and the differences in Devin Booker's game. I think we need to see for him to be a really, truly great NBA player. I don't know that 29 wins is super doable. I would expect like the Kings and the Timberwolves and and Dallas and those types of teams to be better than Phoenix. If I was betting it, I think I'd go under 29, just assuming that Phoenix is Phoenix, but I do think that's right around what they would win. Like, if you told me they won 30 games or 32 games, like I could see that too. But I would expect, I think, them to go under.
Yeah, I just the reason that's hard for me to get excited about this team, despite like the superstar young talent, is like there's not a lot of history of winning with this group. Like
No, they have no players other than Ricky Rubio that have like won.
that's what ties into my bold prediction. Because like, look, like they're excited about Kelly Oubre. Kelly Oubre's never quite been a dependable winning player in the NBA. Dario Saric, two teams have basically given up on him by now. And same with Ricky Rubio. I mean, Minnesota had him and tried to find an upgrade. Utah had him and tried to find an upgrade. I think these guys are not quite as good as their reputation. I don't think Ricky Rubio is an above average point guard as
Maybe
far as
not now. Maybe not now.
In fact, that's my bold prediction. I think they're going to go under. I think they could, if they went balls to the wall all year long, maybe they could win 30 games, but I think they'll eventually like turn off the gas and tank towards the end of the season, kind of pull up a little lame. So I think they'll win like 26 games. It's not something I would bet. It's not something I'd be excited to bet,
That is not a very bold prediction.
No, my bold prediction is this.
Go ahead. Let's hear it. I'm excited for this.
Ricky Rubio, your boy, you're above average point guard, can't shoot. And, some people don't think is as good of a defender as his metrics. I think this is kind of his last stand as somebody that people are going to keep investing in. If he doesn't rise all tides and lead this team to 5-10 extra wins, I think it's almost like using a football analogy, it's almost like a Ryan Tannehill, Blake Bortles situation where it's just like, you know what, maybe he's just not a starter.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see it. Obviously, age too. Like he's still young because he's been around for a while, but he's a lot of miles. That's a good one. I put two. One that I think is definitely going to happen, and one that's kind of more fun. I have Cam Johnson, NBA rookie first team performer this year. I think he's going to get a ton of opportunities. I think he is very close to his ceiling. I think he's just going to have to shoot threes. I could see Cam Johnson averaging like 11 points a game and shooting like 41% from three, and that's just who he is for his whole career. But I think as a rookie, that's going to be very good. So I think
I really like that one because if people haven't followed, a lot of NBA fans just follow the draft, and Cam Johnson hadn't been a big name, but you follow a lot of college basketball, and you know that he was probably the best shooter in college basketball last year. And so if Cam Johnson can play some four maybe, or Mikal Bridges, like he's a good 3-and-D guy. So there is maybe those guys. Like I'm more excited about those guys than I am Kelly Oubre.
Yeah, and then I have Kelly Oubre as I think he'll end up in two on-court altercations this year. Because Kelly Oubre is kind of a little bit of a loon on the court, but yeah, the real one I do think Cam Johnson, NBA rookie first team, and then league pass rating. So I did this on an A to F scale. You could also give pluses and minuses. I did not tip you to this to begin with, so I'll hear what you think of this. I rated the Suns a C-. I think they will score the ball at a high rate. I think Booker and Ayton are fun to watch. They'll take a lot of threes, but I think they're going to lose a ton of games. I think they're going to be really bad on the road. I don't think this is the type of team where you're like, oh, man, Phoenix is playing on a Thursday night. Like, I got to watch them. But I think they'll be entertaining certain nights, and I think other nights they'll be real duds. So I gave them a C-.
If you have a busy life and you have a baby at home, like I'd probably watch like one or two games of Phoenix this year if I had the choice, just because I want to see Ayton, I want to see how he develops. But other than that, there's not a lot I'm excited about. So I agree with you. I think C- is about right.
Okay. Next team, surprisingly, they finished fourth in the Pacific Division last year. The Los Angeles Lakers, 37-45 last year. Their Bovada over-under this year is 51.5. What didn't they do in the offseason, Zandrick? Why don't you walk us through it?
Well, geez, Louise, it's just a whole bunch of new names. I'm trying to think who stayed on the team. It looks like only a couple of people.
Rajon Rondo, Kyle Kuzma, and LeBron. Yeah,
and KCP is back for another.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
But besides that, and JaVale McGee. So besides that, they traded all their young guys basically, except for Kuzma, for AD, Anthony Davis, and then they couldn't sign like the third star around them. They settled for DeMarcus Cousins, who ended up getting hurt. Of course, we'll talk about that. And in terms of their, side pieces that they signed, kind of a mixed bag. They're going to go with a guard. They have Rondo, shooter, Quinn Cook, and Troy Daniels. Alex Caruso's back.
I didn't even put Alex Caruso in my
people love him. On Reddit, people love Alex Caruso. Danny Green they brought in, Jared Dudley.
Avery Bradley.
Avery Bradley, I forgot about him. And so, and they haven't signed a center yet, right? They're talking to Dwight Howard, apparently.
So let's talk about that. So here's what I have as their projected starters. I am not sure about this, to be totally honest, especially because Anthony Davis doesn't want to play the 4. So right now I have LeBron, Danny Green, Kuzma, AD, and then JaVale McGee.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's right. I don't know if Rondo will start. I'm not sure if Quinn Cook will start. And then in the contributors, Rondo, Quinn Cook, Avery Bradley, KCP, Jared Dudley, Troy Daniels, and then whoever they sign to replace Boogie, whether that be Dwight Howard, Joakim Noah, or Marcin Gortat. Those are the 3 names we're hearing. Real tough break for DeMarcus Cousins, man. Like tearing his ACL. In 500 days, this guy tore his Achilles. 544 days, he tore his Achilles, tore his quad. Now he tore his ACL. I don't think he'll never play again, but getting his $100 million, it stinks. Like it sucks for him. He's kind of a guy who I think now people don't realize like how good he really was. Like I do think he was like one of the 10 most talented guys in the NBA. Obviously, he had his own kind of issues, but
well, I always say that too. Like he's probably one of the most misunderstood basketball players, just in terms of like his on court, because he's a lot more skilled than people realize.
He can do everything. Really pass it. He can shoot it. Like great player.
But there's this tendency when you have a big guy, a big man score, you think they're Shaq, and that's not him. He was never that guy. He's just more skill and size than anything else. And so when you zap like what athleticism he had, it gets ugly quickly. And he actually played like okay in the regular season last year when he rounded into form. I mean, you look at the numbers; it was 16-8, good true shooting. He actually got 1.3 steals and 1.5 blocks a game in limited minutes. So he was kind of rounding into form until he got hurt again, and then just looked bad in the playoffs. And now he gets hurt again. For a guy who's walking around like 270, I don't know how big he is.
I mean, there were those videos of him in like the LA Fitness Open runs where he looked really out of shape. He looked huge, and then there were videos of him in like the Lakers facility where he looked like he was in shape. I don't know specifically what the Lakers should have expected from DeMarcus Cousins this year. Like, I don't know if he would have started. I don't know if he would have. I don't know if he was a 15, 8, and 5 guy. Like, I have no idea. I really don't know. I think, I'm glad Boogie got paid some money. I'm sad for him. We'll probably see him next year. But, like, this isn't a crushing loss for the Lakers. It's probably better if they have less centers on their roster so they can force Anthony Davis to play
that's a good point. But you know what? Like, we said all last year, Golden State, like, I thought Cousins was more of a liability for Golden State in the playoffs than not, just because they needed to play small and they didn't need to ruin their rhythm. Clearly the Lakers need to go small in the playoffs. I think there's no doubt about that. Anthony Davis, like the one great playoff series he had when they swept Portland, he was playing center because coincidentally Boogie Cousins got hurt.
Yeah.
So they need to do that. It's just a matter of like, maybe he just doesn't want to do it in the long slog of the regular season. So like, to me, it's like signing like a Gortat or Dwight Howard, just kind of give him 20 minutes a night in the regular season and then maybe 10 a night in the playoffs. I don't know.
So I would be worried. Gortat, I think, he makes sense. He's a good teammate despite his like John Wall issues or whatever. I think that issue was more like what he could give you on the court. I'd be a little bit wary. I don't understand why Joakim Noah is not just like the snap guy that you sign. Like he hustles, like he gets along with people. He like demands that you get better.
Does he get along with LeBron though? Because they always clashed.
I don't know. That's tough. Obviously, like the egos here are a big part of what make the Lakers so interesting this year, and that's why like the Dwight Howard thing. Like he already didn't work in LA, even though he had an okay season. But like him and LeBron, it just doesn't really. I don't know. It doesn't really make sense. Like Noah to me is the guy to get, especially because like you're going to need energy on certain nights when you have like one of LeBron or AD out. He always provides that. What do you think? Over under 51.5.
It's a really great over-under.
It's a good number.
Yeah, I mean, last year that would have been the 5th seed in the West. So based on that, you look at it, you look at the over. But, a team like Utah, who was pretty much, rolling on all cylinders last year, did pretty well, only won 50 games. So it is still a high bar. I don't know. It's one I would stay away from in real life. If I'm forced to make a pick on Bovada, I think I would go. I don't know. I could see it going either way. I could see this team winning. You talk about worst case scenario. I could see the chemistry not clicking and then winning 45 games, or I could see just the overwhelming talent of LeBron and Anthony Davis winning 53 games, 54 games.
I don't think they're the type of team that like is going to win 60 games. Like I don't see that happening. They're not going to play enough. But yeah, could they win 55?
If I had to pick, I would probably go under, slightly under, like 49, 50. But it's just like it's such a narrow thread that I would not recommend betting it either way.
All right. So best case, worst case. Best case, they win the NBA title. It's the bottom line. There are 3 teams in this division that very clearly that's their best case scenario. Worst case, I agreed. I have LeBron and Anthony Davis injuries. They have a ton of inner turmoil. They missed the playoffs, and Anthony Davis signed somewhere else in the offseason. I don't think that'll happen, but there is a world.
That would be a worst case. Yeah, no, definitely.
AD leaving, I think, is not going to happen. I kind of added that in just for fun. But there is a world where this team misses the playoffs. Like, it could absolutely happen. They win 43 games. That's not going to be enough, I don't think, in the West. So that would be my kind of thought process on them going over, is that they know they have to make the playoffs.
Right.
So that's why LeBron and AD end up playing 65 to 70 games rather than like the 60 that you'd probably like to see them play, because the West is going to be really tight and you're just not going to be able to afford to lose a game on a Wednesday night in February to Sacramento. You know, you have to win that game.
That's a great point. And I'd be curious. I don't know if we could do that research, but pretty much since Cleveland days, his first run in Cleveland, there's a year where he won like 65 games or something like that with Mike Brown's team when he was a young player.
Yeah, ever 67 games, right? They won.
Yeah, and ever since then, they didn't win the title that year. LeBron hasn't cared about racking up wins in the regular season. I mean, it's just like something that he hasn't had to bother to do. So I'd be curious to look back, like how many times has he gone over or under his prediction? I would guess it's under more often than not.
Yeah, that'd be my assumption too, because in Cleveland, well, I don't know. He has a couple 60-win seasons, and we know that the NBA doesn't, or Bovado or Vegas doesn't typically set over-unders at over 60. So probably lately it's been more unders. I don't know if it's been that all the way for early in his career. I do want to talk about one other thing though. And I don't even have this as a bold prediction. You probably do. We'll get to that in a second. But we talked about this before. Did you see Royce White's comments about Carmelo Anthony being blackballed, and specifically how I think people thought he was going after Jared Dudley? I thought he was kind of going after LeBron for not taking care of Carmelo. But did you see this where he said that like Melo is better than Jared Dudley? It's stunning he's not on a team, and NBA players know that.
Yeah, it's just Royce White, whatever. I mean, it's a way to like cling to relevance, I guess, to like say stuff.
A lot of people said that. Somebody asked him his opinion, and he just gave it. I thought it was a really interesting thing. Do you think that Carmelo Anthony plays on the Lakers this year?
No, I don't think so. You know what? Actually, I've been talking myself into Carmelo being a decent contributor in Oklahoma and Houston. I just don't think the fit really makes sense here, because you have like a kind of an empty calorie scorer. No offense to Kyle Kuzma, it's kind of him anyway.
It is a worse. He's like Kyle Kuzma's a worse version of like who Carmelo is, or right.
was, yeah. And Jared Dudley, I think, is a little bit better in the role than Carmelo. I mean, he's a little out of shape too, but like he at least is a savvy defender, I guess you would say. Still threes, and I'd rather have him out there than Carmelo. He's used to fitting a role. I think it's not gonna be a blow to his ego to be the eighth man.
I think like that's the problem with the nuance in this discussion, is that like I think everybody in the NBA knows that Carmelo Anthony is a better basketball player in a vacuum than Jared Dudley is. Like he's just better. Like Carmelo is a borderline Hall of Famer. I think he should definitely be a Hall of Famer, but.
Right. I agree. No, you know what it is? Like, not to use another NFL analogy, I guess I'm winding up the NFL season, about Kaepernick. Kaepernick's getting blackballed, allegedly. There's a very different...
I don't want to do this. This is...
No, I'm forgetting that. Like, there's a very different skill set between being a starting NFL quarterback and being a good backup. And being a good backup's not about, like, how good you are in the field. It's how you're willing to contribute in the locker room and in the QB room and help being a mentor. I think being, like, the eighth man is similar in a basketball. Like, you have to be willing to play the role. So you may be the most talented guy in the world, but once you hit the wall and you're not willing to accept that role, then you're not going to be as helpful as a less talented player who is.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the problem is that Melo doesn't want to play the 4, and he doesn't want to come off the bench. And when he does play, he doesn't want to be like a 3-and-D guy. He doesn't want to guard bigger players. He wants to play 25 minutes a night. If Carmelo Anthony wanted to be like Jared Dudley and was like, here's how Jared Dudley plays, I'm going to play that exact role, he would be a very good NBA role player, I think, because he really doesn't guard anymore. He'd have to be more physical. He'd have to try to guard some slower guys. Like, he can't play on the perimeter, but he just doesn't want to do that.
Right. And he gave the interview on First Take, I think, where he was talking about, how it it was hard for him, but they kind of talked him into it and he accepted that role. It's like, it's really not the job of the front office to like hold your hand and like get you to buy in. Like you have to come, fully on board, like they're not going to care about the ninth man managing his ego. You have to kind of put that aside and contribute. Like Vince Carter. Vince Carter was as big a star as Carmelo Anthony, and he's hanging on at 42 because he's willing to accept that role and, fit in.
I totally agree with that. And again, I don't have a problem with Jared Dudley kind of firing back at Royce White and Royce White kind of saying like, I thought it was really funny that Royce White basically, I'll put a dollar in the swear jar for this, but Royce White basically called him a kiss ass like to the media, which I thought was awesome because I do think that's Jared Dudley for sure. But it's just an interesting discussion because, the Lakers' depth, I think a lot of people look at the Lakers' depth, and we'll get to bold predictions, but I think people look at the Lakers' depth and they're like, man, this team's pretty deep with like quality NBA players. And I don't know that I agree with that, Zan. Like, I do think that like Quinn Cook is fine. Like, I think Avery Bradley's okay. I think Rondo's okay. I think Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is okay. But I think this rotation is pretty freaking thin. And that's one of the reasons why, if you ask me today what team I think is going to win the Pacific, I think it's going to be the Lakers because I think they're going to have to get more out of LeBron and Anthony Davis than either Golden State has to get out of, Curry, Russell, and Clay, or the Clippers have to get out of Kawhi and Paul George, because I think the Lakers' margin for error is much, much smaller than the other two teams in this division.
That's interesting. I don't know. It'd be interesting. I heard Brian Windhorst, I think he was on Bill Simmons' podcast, and he was talking about, there's this perception that LeBron wants to, basketball's not as important, but he wants to become, Hollywood guy and Space Jam's going to come out. But they really tie together. Like LeBron's star power is based on the fact that he's the best basketball player in the world, or the perception of that. So he can't miss the playoffs and then star in Space Jam, like he needs to fare well. So he should be motivated. I thought this was an interesting stat. I looked it up. Michael Jordan versus LeBron James's winning percentage. In the regular season, they're both 63%. And in the playoffs, Jordan 66%, LeBron 65%. Again, very similar. It's just the finals is a big difference. Jordan 68%, LeBron 37% per game. We're talking.
Yeah, I get that.
So,
and obviously, all the ring truthers, Jordan 100% in the NBA Finals. LeBron,
yeah, that's why it's so stupid. But
so bold prediction. What do you got for the Lakers?
Bold prediction is, as much as I want to like default, and when we were ranking best players in the league, I still rank LeBron as the best non-Durant, best healthy player in the league. I think he's still not that far off from where he was. But my prediction is, now that he's 34, I don't think he's going to be able to go all out every night. And if he misses 10 games, 15 games, that's a huge boon to Anthony Davis's stat total. Because he could like fill up the room, you know what I mean? Like if he's the star of a team, he could put up 35, 15, and 5 a night.
It sounds like we both are thinking along the same lines here. Go ahead.
I was going to say my bold prediction is I think when we do our player rankings next year, I think we're going to say Anthony Davis is the best player in the NBA.
All right. So similar, I have two. My first one, which I think is the most bold prediction I'll make the entire time we do this show, I think Frank Vogel will be their head coach the entire year. I am confident in that.
I disagree with that.
Yeah, no, I know. That's why it's bold. But then the other one I have is I think Anthony Davis is going to win MVP this year. That's what I think. I think LeBron is going to push that narrative. I think the Lakers are going to be on TV a bunch. I think people are going to be like, there was a stretch of time in New Orleans 2 years ago where Anthony Davis was legitimately the best player in the league, and you just really didn't see it because New Orleans is never on TV. You're going to see it if he's healthy, and I think I think that narrative is going to start very early, kind of like the Giannis train did last year.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to let up, and I think that he's going to win MVP if the Lakers end up having a very good regular season. Because again, I think a lot of the media are just going to be like, "Oh, LeBron says Anthony Davis should win MVP, so like he knows everything," and I think that's a big part of it. So whether or not he ends up being the best player, like you say, I think he's going to end up having a ton of chances to win MVP this year. League pass rating, I got him as a B+. Their drama is going to be outstanding. I think their style of play is not going to be that exciting. So I think you're going to tune in because they're going to be on a lot. I think you're going to want to see what they do on a regular basis. I don't think it's going to be particularly aesthetically pleasing basketball, but I think it's the Lakers you'll watch. So I got them as a B+. How about you?
For league pass, I say I have a lot higher because I think if they're playing well and you have two of the best 5 players on the planet, that's an A. And if they're going badly and they're fighting and they're demanding trades and they're bashing each other in the media, then that's an A+ for me because I just love that drama. So I'm giving them a solid A. I think they're must-watch TV.
All right, an A. All right, real quick before we get to the next three teams in this division, I want to talk about Podcast One Fantasy Football because, as you know, Zandrick, you're getting right into football season, but football season's around the corner. Podcast One Sportsnet has the best shows to help you build the best fantasy team in the league. You can listen to Jeff Ratcliffe break down all of the latest NFL news on Pro Football Focus Fantasy, serve up some picks with Ross Tucker's Fantasy Feast, take a spin with the award-winning Finalysis on the Fantasy Record, or get all the tricks for fantasy sports and gambling with the Underdog Sports Fantasy Hour. So dominate the competition and download new episodes of these shows and more every week on Apple Podcasts and Podcast One. You're playing fantasy football, right? Right, Zan?
Well, I didn't want to bring it up, but you rejected my league. I invited Tyler into our league that we've been having for 10 years, and you said no repeatedly.
Yeah, I don't play fantasy football. It ruins my Sundays. I just want to watch.
But have you been listening to Fantasy Focus podcasts? I mean, maybe maybe you're buying your own hype. Maybe if you listen to your own ad reads and actually follow through, you'd get excited about it.
I think football fascinates me because baseball the same way. Like you've talked about this before, like you're a stats guy or whatever. Like I love advanced stats in baseball. It's kind of cool to see like who's playing well, who might regress. But like football, there's this huge like kind of revolution between like is Lamar Jackson good is great, right? So it's like, oh, he's super inaccurate. And then advanced stats are like, oh, he's really good. So I've been listening and reading a lot of stuff about quarterbacks to try to kind of figure out why quarterbacks are good. Because I think like that's the one thing. If you have a good quarterback, your team is pretty good, right? Like that's just kind of the bottom line. If your quarterback stinks, your team is not going to be any good. So I've been interested, and I would like to. I'll go to.
You're cracking that code. That's your big analysis.
Yeah, and
it's a good thing we're doing a basketball podcast.
And I'll obviously be on Bovada, trying to invest some money in teams. So I have done that this year.
So what was your big research? That was your conclusion? Do you have anything more?
I got nothing else. You need a quarterback.
That was just your. I thought.
No,
okay.
I don't know. Anyway, all right. Next team, the Sacramento Kings. They are Zandrick's favorite team in the NBA with his favorite player, Marvin Bagley. Last year, 39-43. Their Bovada over-under is 37.5. Are they going to go over 37.5 wins this year, Zandrick?
Well, and just to talk about it's one of the few teams that didn't do a ton. Actually, they just added a couple of, veteran role players, Corey Joseph,
Dwayne Dedman, Trevor Ariza.
And Trevor Ariza, yeah, who was good about 5 years ago. I think. So what was it last year? What was the over under again? Sorry, repeat.
They went 39-43. This year their over under is 37.5. Keep in mind they had the toughest stretch in the league to end April. So if it's close early, probably not going to happen.
I think that's a smart over under on Bovada's part because there's a natural presumption that this is a young team that improved last year. They're only going to get better. But I think there's a natural regression here. And their 3-point shooting was extremely hot last year. Buddy Hield 43%. He might be that good, but it's a high bar. I think
Buddy Hield like the 5th most threes ever in an NBA season, and nobody really talked about it. But it seems that was one of the first bold predictions I typed out was that I thought he was going to shoot like less than 40%, and then I was like, that's still really good. I don't want to do that, so I deleted that one. But that's the first thing I thought of, Zan, was like Buddy Hield's going to regress.
Yeah, and I'm not as big as stats guys maybe say, but like certain things like that, like injuries are easy to predict in terms of regression, and 3-point shooting, it just goes up and down. And so if somebody was hot last year, then it tends to regress to the mean. And for Buddy Hield, it might be 40% is the mean, but that's still 30 points down from last year.
That's actually a bigger regression, I think, than people realize. They're like, oh man, he shot 39%. Like that's still really good. Like 44% on like 200 shots or 400 shots. Like that's actually a lot.
And I don't know about the coaching difference. I don't know Dave Yeager to Luke Walton. Maybe it's a slight downgrade to me, I guess. Maybe Yeager's just a dick or something, but he tends to overachieve. So that kind of scares me a little bit. 37, I think it's so close to it's like a perfect line for me. I would probably go slightly under again, but it'd be like 35, 36, 37. I think it's really right in that range.
Yeah. All right. So real quick, this is what I thought for their starting lineup this year. De'Aaron Fox, obviously, Buddy, Harrison Barnes. I think Marvin Bagley will start this year. They started Bielitsa last year. And then I think Dwayne Dedman will be the 5. Contributors, I like their bench. Corey Joseph, Bogdanovich, Ariza, Bielitsa, Rashawn Holmes, and then one of like Harry Giles, Caleb Swanigan, whatever. I mean, their bench is pretty good. This is a team of good players. And I unfortunately agree with you. I think this is an under for sure. I think this team could be really good. I think like they
so like best case scenario, like do you think they make the playoffs? I mean, that's obviously best case, but do you think they could win 45 games?
So that was what I had as their best case scenario. They like gel early, they get out of the gate really fast. This team, they have two guys take big jumps with Fox and Bagley, both becoming actual stars. And I think like they make the playoffs as like the 5 seed and upset whoever the 4 seed is. Like I think that's their best case scenario. They're not good enough, in my opinion, to advance past the second round of the playoffs. And I don't really see a scenario they make the playoffs, but I think it's possible. I think they're one of the teams that I think could really swing the Western Conference playoff race if they end up taking another jump, because they do have some very good players like De'Aaron Fox, Buddy, Harrison Barnes, Marvin Bagley, Dedmon, Corey Joseph, Bogdanovich, Bielitsa. Like those guys are good NBA players, and Fox and Bagley could be great NBA players. So if they are, this team could be pretty good. I don't think they're good enough to break into the top 4, though, in the West, Zan. I don't see it.
No, I don't at all. I think that even that's optimistic. So what's your bold prediction on this team?
Well, I have their worst case scenario as...
Well, I think 35 wins is even kind of would be deflating. I don't know if it's worst case, but...
Yeah, Vivek could be upset about that. It's interesting kind of thought experiment to discuss, like, is Luke Walton an upgrade or a downgrade to Dave Yeager? He is probably a downgrade in terms of X's and O's, but it, like we said, like Yeager and my guy Brandon Williams were just at odds the entire season. Like maybe, not having to deal with that, like maybe Luke Walton's better. Players really like him. It sounds like he's pretty smart. So I don't know if it's an upgrade or a downgrade either. I think it's surely a downgrade in terms of quality of on-court coaching, but I can't prove that. I can't definitively say that.
No, yeah, it's hard to say. And the one optimism I would have about Luke Walton is the idea of, because I think the Kings' best chances are to like go small essentially and like run teams off the court. Like if you have De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield, start Bogdanovich and then Barnes at the 4 and Bagley at the 5. That's a really fast, explosive, offensive-minded team. I really like that lineup. I don't know if they're going to do it or not.
And you can do that a bunch too, because you can do that around Rashawn Holmes at the 5. You can do that with Bielitsa at the 4 and Bagley at the 5. But I agree with you, like Bagley should probably spend 75% of his minutes at the 5.
Yeah. I mean, he's sort of like, defensively, he's not Anthony Davis. But like in terms of like the best use of him, I think that is like he is faster than 95% of centers. Like he should, he needs to like thrive in that role.
It is very likely that De'Aaron Fox ends up being their best player over the next couple of years. Why can't this team be similar to the original Phoenix Suns, and why can't Marvin Bagley be Amari Stoudemire and be like 26 and 12 just on rim running? Like that would kind of be what I'd try to emulate with spread pick and roll, because you have a guy like De'Aaron Fox, who I do think is really dynamic. And I think like that's one of the places that the Wizards struggled with John Wall. I don't want to make a lazy comparison because they're both like, lanky, super fast, athletic point guards. But if that's what you look like, it might be smarter when you do have 3 guys who can really make shots around an absolute animal energy big. That might be the best use for this team for sure.
No, I definitely think that I can see it. I'm excited about their future. I just think it might not be next year. It might be 2 years from now. It might be 3 years from now. And so like my bold prediction, if we're going to say, not only are the Kings going to regress slightly, but I think it's going to hit De'Aaron Fox the most. Like right now, I think it's like peak De'Aaron Fox hype in the media. Like everyone's like, he did well in the Olympic team, in the practices. Apparently Bill Simmons is saying he's the best young point guard in the league. I think everyone is going to expect another leap, and I don't think it's going to happen. And I'll give you some stats too. Last year from a rookie to sophomore year, his field goal improved 41 to 46%. His threes improved 31 to 37%. These are massive leaps. And so you might again say, hey, if this keeps going, watch out. He's going to be 25 and 10 next year. Realistically, it might drip back. I don't think he's as good of a shooter as those numbers last year. And free throw wise, he shoots 72, 73%, which indicates that maybe he's not that great of a shooter. I think his shooting is going to slip. I think some of the love for De'Aaron Fox is going to slip. I still think he's a good young point guard. I just don't see like the best young point guard in the league hype.
Right. And so it's funny. I had bold prediction and I was very close to being like De'Aaron Fox, 3rd team all NBA. And I looked into it and I was like, I just don't see it this year. Could it happen at some point? Yeah. It's hard though, if you're only going to be like a 20 point per game scorer, because your assist numbers have to be great. I don't think he is a special passer. I think that's the difference between him and Wall. But I mean, I thought about it too because he was really good last year. I think their worst case scenario, by the way, is like they win 30 games. This is the same, like the middle of the road thing. And then like I put like Luke Walton has more allegations come out against him. It's like an embarrassing thing for the team. But because they could potentially that could happen, and then you have to replace your coach if anything ends up being true. We don't know. I don't want to speculate wildly, but like
that kind of died down though, right?
It did. I haven't heard anything about it. So there's a scenario where like that occurs, and then the Kings end up with like the 9th pick again, and you're like, are we really doing this? And Bagley doesn't take as big of a jump, and Fox regresses, and you're like, okay, what we really have is like a team that is like the Magic, where in the East they could be the 6th seed every single year, but they're never competing for a title. And in the West, that team's probably the 10th seed.
No, I agree. Like I think this team in the East is better than the Magic.
I agree. My bold predictions, though, along the lines of Marvin Bagley, I have, not to toot my own horn as like a watch film guy, but I've been really intrigued with Marvin Bagley. I know this is a guy that you think is a future, like he has a chance to be the best player in the draft class. I don't know that I feel that way. I've got Marvin Bagley averages 28 total points and rebounds next year combined.
28. Oh, okay, because I was confused by your math. Okay. Well, last year it was 22 basically. So in only 26 minutes. So I don't think it's that crazy of a prediction.
Because I do think he will start. I think they will find interesting ways for him to be on the court to exploit matchup issues. I think we're seeing 18 and 10. I think he could be a better rebounder than people think. So I'm going.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I've been saying, you're a big film guy or whatever, but as not a film guy, I've been saying that the whole time. Like he's a much better rebounder than people think, because he doesn't have length, I guess. And so the idea is that he can't rebound. But meanwhile, he like dwarfs, Jaren Jackson and all these other big guys.
Great out of area rebounder, like an awesome out of area rebounder. Motor matters. The other bold prediction I had. One of Harry Giles or Caleb Swanigan gets traded in the middle of the year, and they put Wenya and Gabriel into their rotation as
wow.
Stretch.
Now you're a film guy because now you went to deep cut with Wenya and Gabriel. Harry Giles is interesting. He always gets so much hype, and then he kind of gets forgotten. And I've just kind of given up on the idea that he's going to be like Chris Webber or whatever. But I hope he turns out, because that would certainly lift the ceiling of this team if he turns into even like a good, 6-man backup.
I don't envision it happening at this point. I was really excited about him last year, but I don't know. It'd be great. He's a great guy, like great kid. Like it'd be awesome if it did happen. I don't see it happening, but I do see the Kings maybe being like, hey, people believe in the potential of Harry Giles. Like maybe we can get a little bit better. We're close to like the 8th spot. Maybe we can get.
So Caleb Swanigan, like what's the return for him? Like,
I don't know. Probably nothing. But I mean, you got bigs under guaranteed deals, and Gabriel's a 2-way guy. So I think you'd have to clear some space. Like Swanigan, they obviously took back in the Scala BCR trade, and I don't see his future on the Kings. But league pass rating. I got him as an A-. I think they're a fun team. I think they've got a lot of young guys. I like the way their roster fits together. I think they can play a lot of different ways. I think Fox and Bagley are potential stars. I think Buddy Hield has the potential to go for 50 on certain nights. This is a team that I'm going to try and watch a good amount this year. I really like Sacramento. A- for me.
I really like the team. I mean, the makeup of the team makes sense. Like this is like a young team that's like fit together really well. I only grade them a B just because if they're 25 and 30 and they're probably not going to make the playoffs, are you really going to get excited about watching the Kings, in January?
Probably not. That's a good point.
Yeah. So but I hope that works out. And I do think in the future, again, I'm not like down on the Kings in the future. I think they could be like a legitimately good team and maybe like win a round or two in the future. It's just, I think it's going to take a little more time.
One of the things I'll say about the Kings real quick before we go to the Clippers is I do like the way they've, like you said, they've built this team, and they need a couple things to go right. Like they need Fox to take another jump. They need Bagley to take another jump. If those things happen, then all of a sudden when we talk about this next year, we could be talking about the Kings being similar to like the Nuggets of last year, where they win 48.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I think their ceiling, some of these teams like, young teams, like they peak, they build and they build and they develop and then they peak at like 40 or 45 wins and that's it. And then they blow it up and start all over. This team, like in the future, has the potential to win 50 plus games. I do believe that. It's just a matter of when.
They're probably the one team that has the most Bucks potential to me in the future, where like all of a sudden Giannis is good and then Giannis is great. And that is what we see from Bagley this year. Like maybe he's good this year. Maybe he averages like 18 and 9. And then all of a sudden he comes back in his third year and he's 25 and 12. And you're like, holy crap, like this team's really good. They're a sleeping giant. Like this team has that to me. I don't see it right now. I'm a little bit less high on those on Bagley than you are, but it could happen for sure, and that's why I think it's cool. I hope it does. I really do. Los Angeles Clippers last year, 48-24. They were the 8th seed.
Yeah,
they were the 8th seed. Their Bovada over/under is 55 wins. Which
is that the highest, or
I believe it is the highest. Yes.
Okay, because I've been kind of threading needles, as they say, and guessing a little bit under, and I have a very clear take on this one. But do you want to? I guess people know their moves, right, by now. That obviously getting Kawhi Leonard and Paul George.
The Bucks are 57.5, so the Bucks are the highest. The Clippers are the highest in the West.
And you like to talk about the starting lineup, so it's probably going to be Beverly, Kawhi, and Paul George. Do you think they're going to start? Who do you have listed for their bigs, actually?
Here's what I have. I have Beverly, Paul George, Kawhi, Mo Harkless, and Zubac. I think they will start a 5-man. They will obviously – they're going to 100% close games with Lou Will, Paul George, Kawhi, Montrezl Harrell, and then my guess is Patrick Beverly will close. But if they need shooting, maybe it'll be Harkless at the 4, maybe J. Michael Green if they need to be a little bit bigger. But I mean, that's how they're going to close games. I don't think the starting lineup matters that much, but it'll be. But I think it'll be Beverly, Paul George, Kawhi, Mo Harkless, and then what do they do with that 5 spot? Like, do they go with J. Michael Green? But they're not going to start. It doesn't sound like they're going to start Harkless or Lou Williams. Sounds like they like them off the bench. They like their connection together. Like I said, I'd expect them to close games with those 2 guys.
And clearly, you talk about best case scenario. You have Kawhi and Paul George dominating the starters. You have the best 1-2 punch off the bench, Lou Williams and Harrell, and then you win the title, right? That's a very realistic possibility.
Yeah, I would say, too, one thing I will say about their worst case scenario before we get back into their over-under, like they're the one team that I can think of, like, I mean, I guess the Bucks maybe is the other one, maybe the Sixers, but like I don't know that the Clippers' worst case – I think the Clippers' worst case scenario is like they lose in the second round of the playoffs. Like this team is deep. They're talented. Like there are some concerns, and we'll get into them. But like is this team capable of losing in the first round if they get the 5 seed? Like, are they going to lose to? Could they lose to Denver or Utah? I guess
if they're not healthy. If they're healthy, I think they would win. So that's obviously a big part of it. Is Kawhi going to be healthy or not?
Do Kawhi and Paul George get along? That's the other thing.
You would presume, right? They like engineered this big move.
Maybe they're mercurial dudes. Like, I don't know, but like I said, I feel like I don't see a scenario they don't make the playoffs. I just don't see it.
No, I agree. And people kind of laugh at like they just hired Ty Lue to be like the top assistant. I think that's a great role for him.
It's a good role.
So it'll help their defensive intensity, I think, all year long too. He's better as a defensive coordinator than a head coach, I guess. So yeah, they could win 60 games too if they're fully healthy.
This seems like a pretty clear under to me. I feel like you're trying to get to saying that and you're trying to like support it. But I think this is an under.
I mean, I don't think there's even question that
it seems way too high. Because, I mean, here's the thing. Like, I'll give you my bold prediction right now. This team at the most wins 50 games.
Wow. Now that's the most?
Because I don't think they care. Like, my point about the Lakers is that like they need to make the playoffs. They need to have some good matchups. I don't think the Clippers care. I think the Clippers are going to spend, and a Doc Rivers, who I think is great, I think they're going to figure out, like, hey, we need to figure out a way to figure out what the best, like, point guard play for us is. We need to figure out the best lineups to play. And then we just need to be ready in the playoffs. I think that's all they care about because they know they're going to make the playoffs. I think this team is, like, very clearly, like, 46 to 50 wins. And people are kind of like, what's wrong with the Clippers? And then, I mean, maybe, like, 52. Don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, it's very random in those terms of games. But, like,
but 55 would be too high.
I just don't think they're going to care. This is the one team I think that's going to care the least about the regular season.
I don't know. You never know. Maybe they want to establish the culture and like their dominance early on. But I agree. I mean, I have a lot of reasons why I would take the under on this one. And one is like last year's team, the core last year's team, they won 48 games. Wow, what a good team. I think it was high. I think it was an overachievement. You talk about Tobias Harris, who was on the team, and Gallinari, who played well. They both shot 43% for the Clippers last year from 3. So we talk about regression. That was a little bit of an overachievement. You talk about expected wins, losses, and, Pythagorean records. They were probably a 43 or 44 win team. So that's sort of like...
Was that what their actual Pythagorean?
Yeah, 43.
43. Yeah.
And so that's the bar. And then also the reason they were so effective last year, or the formula that really worked for them, was this sort of, hand the ball to Lou Williams and let him go, and let him score. He scored 20 points in 26 minutes a game. Awesome. What he does well is score the ball and attack the rim. And get 6.5 free throws a game. He's not going to be able to do that for 26 minutes a game anymore with two other stars in front of him. He's not going to have the ball in his hands, and it's going to relegate him to a more marginal role and expose some of his defensive liabilities there. He's a really poor defender. So if he's limited, takes a slight step back, then that team's even a little bit worse. And primarily, my concern is this like idea that Kawhi Leonard is somehow like LeBron James. Or prime LeBron James. Like, he had a great stretch last year in the playoffs, but he played 60 games. He's played 62 games per 82 for his career. He wore down in the playoffs. I'm sorry, he did. He looked like he was like limping along through the finals, and his team got really hot around him, and they beat a injury battered Golden State team. What was it, 4-2? It wasn't like they swept Golden State. I don't see him as somebody who's carrying team to 60 wins a year. I think he's a top 5 player. He's not the best player in the league. I think this team is going to win. I think 52 games, but I think it's unlikely that they're the number 1 seed.
I agree with that. And like I said, I think it's more likely that they end up with like the 5 seed. I really do.
Yeah. And that's not saying anything about the chances in the playoffs. I think they still, if you had to bet, maybe they're still the betting favorite, but it's like a 10% chance of winning the finals versus like this 25% chance.
I agree with that. I do think they're the smartest bet for the playoffs. I think they're a team that I'm going to be monitoring very, very closely on Bovada at the end of the year, because like I said, if they are somehow like the 6 seed or the 5 seed, and they're all of a sudden like plus 300 to win the NBA title, like that's a number that I am very interested in getting on this particular team. I also think this year's NBA season is going to be really interesting to see how people kind of judge how you want to manage minutes in the regular season, because, Kawhi played 50 games or 60 games last year, and they were awesome in those games. He averaged 26 points a game. And then in the playoffs, it felt like he got stronger. So like, what are other teams going to do? Is everyone going to try to just win 50 games in the regular season and go from there?
They should. I mean, definitely should. And in the West, that's harder. We haven't seen a team like manage minutes in the West as much as you can do it in the East. Do you think, I don't know. I think the Clippers might try a little harder than you do, because I think if they go into the playoffs with like a 48-win team, they're not going to have a ton of confidence. So I think they want to win over 50 games. I just don't know if they're capable. And I don't know if they should be. They shouldn't be going balls to the wall every night.
I think the biggest thing is what you're saying is that like everyone's valuing their depth, and obviously they added Patrick Beverley and whatever, but like everyone's valuing this like Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell, like Landry Shamet, blah, 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 blah. And we don't know quite how good they are, I guess.
Well, I don't mind them all individually, and I think they're good.
In the NBA.
Yeah, but like you would wonder, you look at JaMychal Green and Zubac as your 4 and 5. I'm like, maybe they need to like redistribute their positions a little bit. And I like Mo Harkless too, but he's more of a tall wing. They're going to be guard heavy. They could be a little small. I think they'll be good. 55 wins, second highest on the board. I think they're closer to the other teams in the West than they are to it being a notch above. I think this is like, if I had to bet on any of these teams, this is the one that I would spend my own money betting on Bovada.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. And like I said, I do think Doc Rivers needs to take a lot of this season and decide like, hey, what are we doing at the point guard spot? Like, how are we going to close games? I need to look and see what lineups matter, because you got to get in a situation. Like I said, this is one of the things that I put as their league pass rating is like, I think this is going to be a somewhat boring team to watch. When they were fun last year, they played really hard. I think it's going to be a ton of iso ball. Like, I think it's going to be a lot of Kawhi.
Well, and that's what I'm worried about with Lou Williams and Kawhi Leonard. Like, how do they play together? Well, like, they just both grab the ball, they steal the ball from each other and try to score. I mean, I don't see it being a natural fit. Paul George fits anybody. That's what's so great about Paul George. Like, you don't worry about him, but everybody else, I'm not really sure.
Yeah. So my other bold prediction was that Paul George plays 50+% of his minutes at the 4 this year. And then I gave them an A for league pass rating though, because I did say like the basketball could end up being very boring, but they're very good. They're going to be on TV all the time. Patrick Beverley and Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell are super fun to watch. Like, this is going to be a team that everyone wants to see. So I gave them an A, but I caution people. I think the basketball is going to be a little bit more boring.
Yeah, that's why I had to give them only a B+. I think defensively they could be really interesting. Beverly, Paul George, Kawhi, and Mo Harkless, like 6'9" wing with a good defender. Like that could be an elite perimeter defense. Offensively downgrades me to B+, but there's certainly a team, one of the elite teams.
All right, last team in the division, Golden State Warriors. Last year, 57-25. This year's Bovada over under 48.5, which, they haven't obviously won less than, I think, 55 games in the last 5 years. So quite a change for the Golden State Warriors. Your thoughts, the things they've done differently. They obviously added D'Angelo Russell, added Alec Burks, extended Draymond, added Willie Cauley-Stein. But this is an interesting team. Lost Kevin Durant. We don't know quite how long Klay Thompson's out for, knowing Klay, maybe January, February. But interesting team. A team I think we both like more than the general public.
Well, certainly than the over-under. And this is the other team that I would bet my money on. It seems really low. 48. I mean, by really low, I mean maybe 5 games low. But still, in over-under terms, that's a lot. Kevin Durant hurts. Losing Klay Thompson hurts, certainly. But I think, because they were on kind of cruise control the last few regular seasons, like people don't realize maybe or remember like how talented and how good these last few Golden State teams were. They won 57 and 58 games, but that was like, on cruise control. And with Curry playing, 65 games a year because he didn't care. If they like you put a gun to their head, those teams could have won 70 games the last few years.
I think so.
So
I mean, the first Golden State team with Kevin Durant, there is a legitimate argument that that's the best team ever assembled.
That was the best team I've ever seen, personally.
And I mean, and all the, like, I don't want to be an advanced stats guy or whatever all the time, but like all the advanced numbers were like they were the best offense and defense, like best net rating or whatever. There were certain games they just didn't care. Like when they cared, they blew everybody out. So
yeah, and I grew up a Bulls fan, like the Jordan fan. So like I'm biased for the Bulls, and I still think that was the best team I ever saw. Since the 90s.
My big concern with this team, Zan, I think if Klay Thompson is healthy, right? If we get Klay Thompson back halfway through the year and he's healthy, which is, I think, legitimately a possibility, but I don't know. Like, I don't want to speculate on it. I think this team is really good. I think it's, their starters at that point will be Steph, Russell, Klay, probably Draymond, and then they typically start a 5-man. So, like, I would guess it'll be Willie Cauley-Stein. My assumption is they'll start Alec Burks with Klay hurt. I don't know that to be the case. Maybe they'll start McKinney. I think the rotation is kind of thin without Klay Thompson, though. Like, it's Looney, Jacob Evans, Glenn Robinson, maybe, McKinney, Jordan Poole. Like, I don't know how good that team is without Klay Thompson. Like, the depth concerns me, and I think we're placing a lot of pressure on, is Klay Thompson going to be back healthy, and can Steph Curry play 75 games, 33 to 35 minutes a night? And that would be my biggest concern, because I think the best case scenario is Klay comes back healthy, Curry returns to being like the MVP candidate, and they win the NBA title. I could see it happening. But I think the worst case scenario is like Steph loses a step, Klay has a setback, D'Angelo Russell's shooting regresses, Draymond gains a bunch of weight now that he signed his extension, and they miss the playoffs. Like, I think that's actually also a possibility. I really do.
No, I agree. And if I was worried about the over-under, I think it's that scenario. Like, it's very dependent on Steph Curry being healthy. Because if he misses 20 games and the team's 500 and the playoffs are a long shot, you're not rushing Klay Thompson back.
No, you're not. You're exactly right. You're not.
That's definitely so. The bet on the over-under is a bet on Steph Curry being healthy. But if he is, I'm not a huge D'Angelo Russell fan, but one of the great things about having D'Angelo Russell is, regardless of how well they play together, Steph Curry can play, 33, 34 minutes and not overextend himself because you have somebody else who can, cover some of those minutes. In terms of the backups, like, they're untested, but on the one plus side is that they're young. And I think Golden State went a little too old recently, with like Sean Livingston, and Iguodala didn't contribute much in the regular season the last few years. So at least they have fresh legs. Maybe there's some diamond in the rough there. Maybe Omari Spellman turns out to be good. I think Willie Cauley-Stein's going to have a pretty good year. So I don't mind Jacob Evans. There's all like kind of intriguing guys who are unproven. And if one or two of them become like a decent rotational player, then I think their depth will be okay.
Yeah, the annoying part about the Warriors' depth is that, like, every time we see these guys, like, we see that Jacob Evans can't play in like the NBA Finals, and we judge them based on that. And it's like, how can he be in the regular season? Jordan Poole, first round pick, he's probably a little bit further away, but at the same time, like, they don't need those guys when rotations are short, and hopefully Clay is back in the playoffs. So that's why, like, I wasn't sure what to do, because it feels like Alec Burks is better than McKinney, but like they got good minutes out of Alfonso McKinney before.
Yeah, and it's one of those, Steve Kerr's a modern coach, but he has a little bit of that preference for veterans. I mean, he's always had that, dating back to like Anderson Varejao. Like he's a little slow to trust the young guys, and a guy I like Damian Lee last year, or a guy who went to Georgetown, Marcus Derrickson, who's a good stretch big, or at least on paper, can't even crack minutes for this team because they rely on the veterans. So we'll see how much. Right now, they don't have those guys to turn back to.
And if you include, like, obviously Clay, Draymond, and Steph Curry all have 7+ years of experience, with Curry having the most at 10. But after that, they have nobody else on their roster other than Alec Burks, who has more than 5 years of NBA experience. So you're having a lot of guys here that haven't played a big role in the past that are going to have to do it. And I think Golden State's going to have to find one more guy. That's kind of I don't know that they'll trade a first-round pick for it. I don't know if they'll trade a young guy for it. But I mean, whether it's the buyout market or something like that, because they're going to play a fun brand of basketball, and I think people will want to play with Steph Curry, and they have 3 guys who can legitimately play make at a high level in Green, Russell, and Curry. I do think Golden State needs to find one more guy. I didn't really include that in bold predictions or anything, but if they're going to be a legitimate title contender when Clay gets healthy, I do think they need one more guy. And I'm not sure who that is. I really don't know who's out there. But we know their cap situation, like they can't go get, Kevin Love or Blake Griffin, they could trade D'Angelo Russell.
Right. I think that's sort of their big move, but I think they'll go with him. I think their thinking is, if Clay comes back, let's win 48, 50 games, make the playoffs. Clay will be back. We have Curry and Clay and D'Angelo Russell as like our perimeter scorers. And then inside is a bunch of energy big guys like Draymond, Willie Cauley-Stein, and Kevon Looney, like grabbing rebounds. That's a formula. I don't know if it's a formula to win the title, but I think if I had to make a bold prediction, I think Golden State is going to win over, obviously, in the 48. Not obviously, but I would definitely take them. And I think they're going to win at least one round. And if I had to make a bold prediction, I think they're going to make the conference finals. I think they're going to beat one of those LA teams just based on, playing style and chemistry and coaching. And I just think they're still a legitimate title contender.
Here's why I thought you'd be so much more bold instead of picking like wins and losses for bold predictions. All right, here's what I got for bold predictions.
Well, with them in the conference finals, that's not bold.
It's bold. I don't think anyone, there are people that are going to say like it's possible, but here's what I got. I think this Warriors team is going to have the league's best offense for the second year in a row. And I think within that, Curry, Draymond, and D'Angelo Russell are all going to average career highs in points per game. So I'm predicting Curry scores over 30 points a game, D'Angelo Russell over 21 points a game, and Draymond over like 14.5 points a game. And then the other thing I'm going to say, because like I said, I believe in narratives and I think this stuff happens. I think this team's going to be good. I think Steve Kerr is going to win Coach of the Year.
Well, okay, that's bold. You beat me on the bold line. And to illustrate your point, since Steve Kerr has taken over 5 years of coaching, they've been in the top 3 in offense every single year, and they've been first more than often than not 3 times.
I think that's going to continue.
Yeah, he clearly has a weapon as Steph Curry that you just no one else can match. I know you love James Harden, but Steph Curry, his 3-point shot is the most dangerous thing in the NBA.
It makes offense so much easier. And the one thing is, like, yes, D'Angelo Russell likes ISO, and like obviously Kevin Durant is Kevin Durant, but if you just stack the two of them next together, like who's better in pick and roll and who's better as a creator, like D'Angelo Russell has a lot of claim to that. So you now have another guy. Like I said, if his shooting regresses, I think it's going to be tough. But I think he's going to end up with way more open shots on this Golden State team, which may keep it, even if his shooting regresses in terms of like guarded threes or whatever, he may shoot better on open threes because he's going to end up with more shots. And like I said, I think with Steve Kerr, everyone's just predicting the Warriors are going to take this big step back. If they win 55 games this year, tell me people aren't going to be like, oh man, Steve Kerr hates Donald Trump and they won 55 games, Coach of the Year, Well,
I think it's more likely that Curry gets MVP because I think Curry will get a lot of credit. But
true.
Think about this. Like last year, Curry was on cruise control in the regular season, blending in with Durant, letting him have his shots. And he only played 34 minutes a game. He shot 11.7 threes per game. Like what is he capable of? Can he shoot 13 threes, 14 threes? And if he does, he'll make, nearly half of them. So it is pretty, like the upside of a healthy Steph Curry as like the lone gunslinger is pretty unlimited.
Yeah, I agree with that. So league pass rating for these guys, A plus. This is the team that other than the Rockets, just because I want to see how that goes, they're the team I'm most excited to watch. I think they're going to be a ton of pick and roll. I think they're going to move the ball. I think we're going to see very much closer to the 2016 Golden State Warriors. There could even be some drama. I don't know how Draymond and D'Lo are going to get along. Like, I think it'll be exciting. I think we see Steve Kerr sometimes get fed up with Draymond, but like, I am very much all in on watching Golden State, new arena, same Steph Curry. Like, it's more fun to watch him go supernova than pretty much anyone.
Anybody, for sure. Well, that's why I had to split the difference here, because when Steph Curry is, getting the ball and firing away, he's the most entertaining player to watch in the NBA. I would give them like, A minus there. If he missed his time, then this could get ugly. Like, if subtract Steph Curry from this team, this might be a 30-win team, right? Wouldn't you say?
I would agree. I think one of the things I'll say is, like, I just typically always feel like we want to look out for the best and just assume that people aren't going to get hurt. The Klay Thompson thing, we are both going to gamble a little bit that, like, Klay Thompson's going to get healthy, and there's no guarantee that that's going to happen this year. It may take longer than we think. And like you said, Steph Curry just typically always misses a few games.
Right. So it's a little hypocritical of me to say how injury-prone Kawhi Leonard is and then not reference the fact that Steph Curry's played less than 70 games the last few years.
Of all the 12 listeners that we have, all they ever hear me say is that one of the reasons I think James Harden is better than Steph Curry is because the guy just takes the craziest lumps every single night. And I think we're going to have to see Steph Curry do a little bit more of that. So it's going to be really interesting to see. And that's why I think this Golden State team is going to be, if they're not the best, the most fun team to watch or the most interesting team to watch, I think they're going to be one of the top three for sure. In terms of like basketball aesthetics.
You know what Steve Kerr should do, and it's kind of hard to articulate maybe, is like, he might not have the luxury of playing Steph Curry 32 minutes a night because the team's just not good enough anymore. But he might have to just like punt some games. Like, let's say you have a back-to-back and you're heading to, the Clippers.
It'd be like the Utah Denver back to back,
right? Or whatever. Like, you just you're going to sacrifice one of these games. Just rest Steph, and just lose by 20 that night. Like, you might have to pick his spots a little bit more.
I think they're going to do that. Obviously, he's been good with that before. I thought this was really interesting, and I don't have it in front of me, but Tom Haberstroh did an article about like the most likely games where there was like a group of people that like looked at team schedules and were like, all right, this is where they'll likely sit guys. And I'll shoot a link to it out on my Twitter, but it was super interesting to kind of think about that because I think NBA coaches and front offices are now are much more forward thinking like that, where they look at the schedule and they're like, okay, we know if possible, Steph's going to miss game 35, going to miss game 42, whatever, because you have to kind of think like that now. You got to be much more, I think, proactive in your load management than you did in the past when everybody just played 80 games a year.
No, totally. And I think players like it too. Like, I think the average, like the Spurs model of like, keeping everyone's minutes down in the 30 range for their older guys. Like, I don't know if players like that because it hurts their per game averages. I think they'd rather sit out a whole game. So I could see that becoming more the case, like Kawhi Leonard. I think the superstars on good teams are going to play 70 games a year.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it really, I think, for the Pacific Division. Let's do real quick. I think it's going to be in order from bottom to top. I think it's going to be Phoenix, Sacramento, Clippers, Lakers, Warriors.
Wow. So you're saying the Warriors number one.
That's what I think. I think all these teams, if I really had to guess, I think the Lakers, Clippers, and Warriors are all going to win between like 49 and 53 games. So I think it's really a coin flip. But I do think the Clippers are going to probably be the third team.
I see. I'll go slightly different, but the same on the top. I would say Golden State wins about 53. Clippers win about 51-ish. I don't know if that hits or over. A little under whatever there was. Lakers around that 50 range. And Sacramento missing the playoffs at like 36. And then Phoenix about, whatever the over-under was. It was about 29. That's about right. 28, 29.
Yeah, I mean, because the expectation is Clippers, Lakers, Warriors.
Right. But, it seems like a common takeaway if you're going on Bovada. We both like Golden State over and Clippers under.
Correct. Yeah, that's true. I also like the Phoenix under the most of the other I like the Phoenix under the third best, I think I like the Clippers under the most and the Warriors over the second most. I just, like I said, there doesn't seem to be a reason for the Clippers to play everybody a bunch of minutes because, like I said, I think they're deep enough and they feel confident they can get to 50 wins without playing Paul George and Kawhi 68 games, So All right, that's it for us this week. Next week, we will do an Eastern Conference division. Haven't quite decided yet. Shoot us a tweet. I am at CYS Tyler. He is at Zan_Ellison. Email the show. Let us know who you want to hear about. ZandrickEllison@gmail.com. And Zan, it's a pleasure as always. I'm happy to be back talking real hoops.
Yeah, no, it was good. I like this episode. I like going into the lineups and depth charts and everything like that. So we'll do more of that for the next month or so.
All right. See everybody next week. Thanks as always for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Underdog Sports NBA Show with your hosts, Tyler Laurie and Zandrick Ellison. Tune in next week for more NBA storylines and news.